Phase 2. The war shifted from a wide front to a localized conflict. From March 18, 1979, until the end of 1985, this phase of the war transitioned from a wide front to localized points. After withdrawing a large portion of its military from Vietnamese territory, the Chinese authorities threatened to teach Vietnam a second lesson, continuing aggressive actions and using military force to attack and undermine the defense capabilities and infrastructure in the border provinces, northern Vietnam. After March 18, 1979, Chinese troops continued to use artillery and mortar to bombard the entire border line. At the same time, they organized multiple attacks to encroach on various points in the border area that belonged to Vietnam. China chose Ha Tan and made Vientiane a focal point for its encroachment. From an area identified as a secondary direction, Vientiane quickly became a hotspot, a point of conflict in the border erosion policy of the Beijing authorities. From April 1979 to December 1980, China launched 282 artillery attacks and conducted 157. The local forces in Ha Tan province responded 45 times, of which 44 were counterattacks using artillery, resulting in the destruction of 477 enemy soldiers and the capture of 34. On March 31, 1981, a company of Chinese troops attacked the border post of Sampon in Mia Vac district. On May 7, 1981, China deployed to infantry regiments and to artillery regiments to seize heights 180A and 180B in Lao Chai Commune, Vientiane district. The Vietnamese armed forces had one battalion from Division 313, Military Region 2, organized for defense. On May 25, 1981, China used two infantry regiments to capture Height 1688 in Than To Commune, Vientiane district. In the years 1980 to 1983, the Chinese side deployed special forces and reconnaissance units to ambush and capture Vietnamese soldiers for intelligence gathering, while continuing to shell Vietnamese territory with artillery and mortar. The year 1984 was marked by intense fighting in Vientiane district and Yen Minh district Ha Tan, the hottest flashpoint along the entire northern border. From April 1984, Chinese troops used artillery to bombard the entire border line of Ha Tan province, a prolonged and fierce assault lasting nearly a month. They launched several offensives to encroach upon Vietnamese territory, primarily focusing on the Vientiane front Ha Tan. After many days of intense artillery bombardment on the border provinces of Vietnam, on April 28, 1984, China launched another invasion to encroach upon the Vietnamese border. This marked China's second act of aggression against Vietnam. China mobilized numerous units, totaling approximately 500,000 troops from 8 out of 10 military regions to attack Vietnam, mainly in Vientiane, present-day Ha Giang, with a front of about 20 kilometers, extending about 10 kilometers deep. The objective was to advance to the north of Thanh Tri Stream, to redraw the border line deep into Vietnamese territory, about 5 kilometers. By the end of April 1984, Chinese troops had captured all the high points along the border: 1509, 772, 685, 266, 233, West Som Lo. Our forces suffered heavy casualties and had to retreat to lower positions to organize defenses to prevent the Chinese troops from advancing deeper into our territory. To regain the lost positions and push back the invaders, the command of Military Region to plan to organize a counter-offensive operation codenamed MB-84. On July 12, 1984, the Forward Command of Military Region to Vientiane front launched the opening battle of the MB-8 for operation to reclaim some positions occupied by the Chinese side on April 28 and May 15, 1984. In the area, with both the west and east banks of the Som Lo River near the Thanh Tri border gate, Vientiane. However, due to unfavorable terrain and firepower, the execution of the MB-8 for operation on July 12, 1984, by the three divisions, 356, 316, 312 to retake the high point 772, 233, 1030 was unsuccessful. Our troops suffered heavy casualties. It can be said that this was the bloodiest day, with the highest number of casualties in the war against encroachment, defending the Vientiane border in Ha Thuyen from 1984 to 1989. Therefore, our officers and soldiers who fought at the Vientiane Ha-Tuyan Front referred to July 12, 1984, as the commemoration day for the martyrs who sacrificed their lives at the Via Zion Ha-Tuyan Front. Since this defeat, especially after Major General Hon Yon was appointed as the commander of the Via Zion Front, he changed our military tactic after investigating the realities of the battlefield, shifting from offensive against offensive to a strategy of defense and encroachment. His son said, "The first thing my father did when he arrived in Via Zion was to completely change the previous combat strategy. He no longer allowed the troops to line up for hand-to-hand combat with the Chinese. He instructed the soldiers to revert to the tactics used during the Ya and Bien Phache campaign. He ordered the troops to dig trenches to avoid enemy shelling, to dig ditches close to the enemy fortifications, using all available caves and crevices to position forces, and then to organize small groups at the company and squad levels for surprise attacks." In fact, the human losses from that time until 1985 combined were not as severe as those in the first few weeks of the campaign. Lieutenant General Dang Quantu, former commander of the Via Zion Front Hajian, stated, "Thus, the Via Zion Front initially involved a rapid military deployment to swiftly reclaim the high points on the border that had been encroached upon by the enemy, but due to hasty preparations, it was not successful. Subsequently, we adopted a long-term strategy, reinforcing our defensive positions, resolutely holding our ground, while also organizing effective counterattacks to inflict losses on them. They suffered significant casualties and failed to achieve their objective of pushing us south of the Tan-3 stream to redraw the border, which weakened their resolve. Ultimately, by 1989, along with various political factors, they had to withdraw their troops. This change in combat tactics helped our military and people repel large-scale enemy attacks in early and mid-1985. The shifting combat strategy also gradually altered the dynamics of the war, transitioning into a new phase of both fighting and negotiating.